Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. Tonight, we're exploring tsunamis, one of the most powerful and misunderstood forces on Earth. They can begin far below the surface, when the seafloor suddenly shifts and lifts an entire column of ocean. In deep water, a tsunami may pass beneath ships almost unnoticed. But as it reaches the coast, that hidden energy can rise, rush inland, and transform the shape of the shoreline in minutes. These waves are not ordinary waves. They can cross whole oceans faster than a jetliner, arrive in groups, and return again after people think the danger has passed. Some have been caused by earthquakes, others by volcanic collapses, underwater landslides, or impacts from space. And in their traces, scientists can read the memory of disasters that happened long before written history. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, there's nothing you need to do but relax. Let your shoulders soften. Allow your breathing to slow. And as your mind begins to loosen its grip on the day, join me as we explore the astonishing science of tsunamis together. Let's begin. Tsunamis can cross entire oceans faster than a jetliner. Out in deep water, the speed comes from the depth of the sea itself. When the ocean is several miles deep, the wave energy can race outward at hundreds of miles an hour, moving with the pace of a commercial aircraft. This is why a rupture near one side of the Pacific can send warnings to coastlines thousands of miles away. The water is not rushing across the whole ocean like a river. Instead, energy is passing through it, from one region to the next, with astonishing efficiency. A single event can disturb an entire basin. In 1960, a great earthquake off Chile sent waves all the way to Hawaii, Japan, and beyond. People on distant shores were facing water set in motion by the other side of the planet. That is one of the strangest truths about tsunamis. They make the ocean feel connected, almost like one enormous instrument carrying a sudden note across the world. A tsunami may look tiny until it reaches shallow water. Far from land, the surface change can be surprisingly modest. A huge tsunami might rise only a few feet, or even less, while it is passing through deep ocean. That small height is deceptive, because the energy is spread through an immense column of water reaching from surface to seafloor. Ordinary waves are mostly surface features, shaped by wind and weather. A tsunami involves the ocean much more deeply. When it approaches the coast, the lower part of that moving energy begins to feel the seafloor. The wave slows, but the energy has to go somewhere. Water piles upward and forward, changing from something almost invisible into something capable of flooding streets, fields, and entire towns. This transformation is called shoaling. It is why people at sea may not realize anything unusual has happened, while people near shore may face a rising surge that seems to appear from nowhere. The danger is hidden until the last part of the journey. The first wave is often not the largest one. This is one of the most dangerous misunderstandings about tsunamis. After the first surge arrives, people may think the event is finished. They may step outside, return to the beach, or go searching for belongings. But tsunami waves usually travel as a sequence, with each wave shaped by the original disturbance, the ocean floor, and the coastline it meets. The largest arrival can come later, sometimes many minutes or even hours after the first. In some places, harbors continue rising and falling long after the initial impact, as water sloshes back and forth in complicated rhythms. This delayed danger has caught communities by surprise in many historic events. A shoreline can seem to calm down, then suddenly surge again with greater force. That is why evacuation guidance often warns people to stay away until officials say it is safe. The sea may look settled for a moment, but the energy can still be moving offshore, waiting for its next arrival. Some tsunamis begin when the seafloor suddenly jumps upward. The ocean does not need wind to make one of these waves. It needs displacement. Along certain fault lines, enormous sections of Earth's crust can lock together for centuries while tectonic stress builds. Then, in a few terrifying moments, the boundary slips. If one side of the seafloor lurches upward, it lifts the water above it. Gravity immediately tries to flatten that raised water back down, and the disturbance spreads outward in every direction. The movement may happen miles below the surface, invisible to anyone on land, until the sea begins behaving strangely. The amount of uplift can be measured in feet, but the area affected can stretch for hundreds of miles. That scale matters. A small splash makes a ripple. A vast plate boundary lifting the ocean makes a basin-wide event. In that instant, geology becomes motion, and the solid earth gives the sea its terrible push. A beach can drain away before the real danger arrives. One of the most unforgettable natural warnings is the sudden retreat of the sea. Water may pull back far beyond the normal shoreline, exposing sand, rocks, reefs, or stranded fish. To someone who does not know the danger, it can look fascinating, even inviting. But that withdrawal can mean the trough of a tsunami has arrived before the crest. The ocean has not vanished. It is gathering into a moving shape that may return with extraordinary force. In several historic disasters, curious people walked toward the exposed seabed and lost precious time. This is why coastal education often teaches a simple rule. When the sea behaves in an unusual way after strong shaking, move inland or uphill immediately. Do not wait for a siren. Do not go closer for a better look. The exposed beach is not a spectacle. It is a message from the ocean written in seconds, and it may be the last warning before the water comes back. The deadliest tsunami in history struck the Indian Ocean. On the 26th of December 2004, a massive undersea earthquake ruptured off northern Sumatra. The seafloor shifted along a fault hundreds of miles long, sending waves across the Indian Ocean with devastating speed. The disaster struck Indonesia first, then Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, the Maldives, Somalia, and other distant shores. More than 200,000 people died, making it the deadliest known tsunami event in recorded history. Part of its tragedy came from surprise. At the time, the Indian Ocean did not have the same kind of basin-wide warning system that existed in the Pacific. Many communities had no clear alert and little public knowledge of natural warning signs. Tourists and residents alike saw the sea withdraw without understanding what it meant. The event changed global disaster planning forever. It showed that a tsunami is not just a local coastal hazard. It can be an ocean-wide emergency, crossing borders faster than information can move through unprepared systems. Japan's word tsunami originally means harbor wave. The name comes from two Japanese words, tsu meaning harbor and nami meaning wave. It is a beautifully practical term, born from observation rather than theory. Fishermen could return from offshore waters without noticing anything dramatic at sea, only to find their harbors damaged or destroyed. That strange contrast helped shape the name. The deep ocean might conceal the wave's height, while enclosed coastal spaces could amplify its effects. Japan has lived with this hazard for centuries because it sits near some of the world's most active plate boundaries. Over time, the word became international because no other term captured the phenomenon as clearly. Older English phrases such as tidal wave were misleading, since tides are driven by the gravity of the moon and sun. Tsunamis have different causes and different behavior. The Japanese word carried with it a warning from experience. The real danger may reveal itself not in the open sea, but where people build, dock, trade, and live beside the water. One Alaskan tsunami climbed higher than the Empire State Building. In 1958, an earthquake shook Lituya Bay in southeast Alaska and triggered a colossal rockfall. Millions of tons of stone crashed into the narrow inlet, pushing water upward with almost unimaginable force. The resulting wave stripped trees from the slopes up to a height of about 1,720 feet. That run-up was higher than the Empire State Building, and it remains the tallest known tsunami run-up ever documented. This was not an ocean-crossing event like those produced by giant subduction earthquakes. It was a local mega-tsunami, concentrated inside a steep-walled bay, where the water had little room to spread. The scale is difficult to picture. Trees were sheared away from mountain slopes as if a giant blade had swept across them. A few people in boats survived, leaving eyewitness accounts that still feel almost impossible. Lituya Bay shows how geography can turn a sudden collapse into one of the most extreme waves ever recorded. Tsunamis can be triggered by volcanoes, landslides, or even impacts. Earthquakes are the most common cause of major destructive events, but they are not the only way to move a vast amount of water. A volcanic island can collapse into the sea. A submarine landslide can race down a continental slope. A pyroclastic flow can enter the ocean as a dense, hot avalanche of gas, ash, and rock. In rare scenarios, an asteroid or comet impact could displace seawater on a scale far beyond ordinary disasters. Each trigger has its own signature. Landslide-generated waves may be intensely powerful close to the source, but fade more quickly with distance. Volcanic tsunamis may arrive with little warning if the collapse is sudden. Impact-generated waves belong mostly to deep time and planetary science, but they remind us of the ocean's sensitivity to sudden violence. The common thread is displacement. Push water quickly enough across a large enough area, and the sea answers by sending energy outward in waves. Deep ocean sensors can detect waves barely taller than a finger. The open ocean hides tsunami energy so well that watching the surface is often not enough. This is why scientists use pressure sensors placed on the seafloor. Even when the water above rises by only a tiny amount, the added weight creates a measurable pressure change. These instruments can detect that subtle signal and send information to buoys at the surface, which then relay data to warning centers. The system is often called DART, short for Deep Ocean Assessment and Reporting of Tsunamis. Its purpose is to confirm whether an earthquake has actually produced a traveling wave. That distinction matters because not every large quake creates a dangerous tsunami. A sensor sitting in darkness miles below the surface may provide the crucial evidence. It is a remarkable idea. A barely noticeable lift in deep water can be translated into a warning for people on distant shores. The tiniest pressure change can become a life-saving message. Most destructive tsunamis begin along violent subduction zones. These are places where one tectonic plate dives beneath another, dragging the seafloor into a slow, grinding contest of pressure and resistance. For long periods, the boundary may appear still. In reality, it is locked, storing strain as the plates continue trying to move. When the fault finally breaks, the upper plate can spring upward and outward. That sudden motion is exactly what can lift seawater across a huge region. Subduction zones circle much of the Pacific and appear near places such as Japan, Chile, Alaska, Indonesia, and Cascadia in North America. They produce the largest earthquakes on Earth, sometimes called megathrust earthquakes. The word sounds technical, but the idea is simple and awe-inspiring. A slab of planet gets stuck, bends under stress, then releases energy that has accumulated for generations. When that release happens beneath the sea, a coastline may face the combined force of geology and gravity arriving together. The Pacific Ring of Fire produces many of Earth's tsunamis. This horseshoe-shaped region follows the edges of the Pacific Ocean, where plates collide, sink, slide, and fracture. It is famous for volcanoes and earthquakes, but it is also one of the world's great tsunami-generating belts. Around its margins lie Japan, the Kuril Islands, Alaska, the west coasts of the Americas, New Zealand, Tonga, and Indonesia. These places are not randomly hazardous. They sit along boundaries where Earth's crust is being recycled and remade. When great undersea earthquakes occur there, energy can radiate across the Pacific like a signal through a bell. That is why distant islands and coastlines pay attention to quakes thousands of miles away. A rupture near South America can matter to Hawaii. A rupture near Alaska can matter to California. The Ring of Fire reveals something profound about Earth. The same tectonic engine that builds mountains and feeds volcanoes can also disturb the ocean on a planetary scale. A tsunami is a wave train, not a single wall. Movies often show one towering face of water racing toward land, but real events are usually more complex. A tsunami can arrive as a series of pulses separated by minutes or longer. Each pulse carries energy from the original disturbance, but coastal shape, seafloor depth, and reflection from nearby land can rearrange the pattern. One area may see a rapid rise. Another may experience repeated surges and withdrawals. In harbors, the water can oscillate like liquid in a giant bowl, producing dangerous currents after the first arrival has passed. Thinking of a tsunami as a single wall makes people underestimate how long the hazard can last. The better image is a train of long waves, each one part of the same event, moving through the ocean with enormous reach. This is why warning centers do not cancel alerts the moment the first water reaches shore. The danger is not just the first impact. It is the continuing rhythm that follows. Earthquakes must move water vertically to create major tsunamis. A powerful quake alone is not enough. The ocean responds most strongly when the seabed is lifted or dropped, because that motion changes the shape of the water column above it. Strike-slip earthquakes, where two blocks of crust slide sideways past each other, can be very destructive on land, but often produce limited tsunami energy. They may shake violently without raising much water. In contrast, a thrust fault beneath the sea can push a broad area upward, creating the kind of displacement that spreads outward as a tsunami. The geometry of the fault matters. So does its depth, its length, and the amount of movement. This is why scientists study earthquake mechanisms so quickly after a rupture. They're not only asking how strong the shaking was, they are asking how the planet moved. A sideways tear and an upward shove can have very different consequences for the ocean, even when the earthquake magnitude sounds frightening. Some powerful earthquakes produce surprisingly small tsunamis. Magnitude tells us how much energy an earthquake releases, but it does not tell the whole story. A deep earthquake may shake a wide region, yet barely disturb the seafloor. A rupture on land can be enormous without pushing the sea directly. Even beneath the ocean, a fault may move in a way that transfers little vertical displacement to the water. This is why tsunami warning centers do not rely on magnitude alone. They compare seismic data with sea level gauges, deep ocean sensors, and models of the fault. Sometimes a very large earthquake produces only modest waves. Other times, a less expected rupture creates serious coastal flooding. The mismatch can be confusing, but it reveals how specific tsunami generation really is. The ocean does not respond to fear, headlines, or numbers on a screen. It responds to motion, shape, depth, and direction. The details of the break determine whether the sea stays mostly calm or begins to travel. A slow earthquake can hide an unusually dangerous tsunami threat. Some ruptures release their energy more gradually than typical earthquakes. They may not produce the violent shaking people expect, yet they can still move large sections of shallow sea floor. These are sometimes called tsunami earthquakes. They are especially dangerous because the warning felt by people on land may seem too weak to justify urgent evacuation. The ground might roll for a long time rather than snap with obvious force. But offshore, the fault can be disturbing the ocean in exactly the wrong place, near the trench where water displacement is most efficient. Historical events have shown that modest shaking can be followed by waves far larger than communities anticipated. This is a difficult message to teach, because instinct tells us bigger shaking means bigger danger. Nature is not always that simple. A slow rupture can be quiet in one sense and catastrophic in another. The danger lies in the hidden movement of the seafloor, not only in how strongly the land trembles. Tsunami waves stretch far longer than ordinary wind waves. A normal beach wave might have a wavelength measured in yards or hundreds of feet. A tsunami can have a wavelength stretching for many miles. That enormous length changes everything about how it behaves. Instead of being a surface ripple that rises, curls, and breaks, it moves as a broad pulse of energy through the water column. In deep ocean, the distance between wave crests can be so large that the sea surface seems almost normal to anyone riding above it. Near land, the same long wave interacts with the bottom over a wide area, which helps create powerful surges and currents. This is also why the water may keep coming inland for several minutes, rather than breaking all at once like a storm wave. The scale is almost hard to hear, because the word wave feels familiar. A tsunami uses that word, but it belongs to a much larger category of motion. It is ocean energy stretched across a landscape-sized distance. Ships at sea may barely notice a passing tsunami. A vessel in deep water can ride over the disturbance without anything dramatic happening. The rise and fall may be spread across such a long distance that it feels more like a gradual change than a wave. There may be no steep face, no breaking crest, and no obvious sign that dangerous energy is moving below. This is why mariners far offshore are often safer staying in deep water rather than trying to return to port during a warning. The hazard grows near coasts, harbors, and shallow shells, where wave energy compresses and currents strengthen. A ship at sea might pass through the same event that later tears through docks and streets. That contrast can seem impossible until you remember the scale involved. The tsunami is not a normal surface wave chasing the vessel. It is a long pulse passing through deep water with little surface drama. The ocean keeps its most dangerous transformation for the place where people are closest. Near shore, tsunami water can surge like a fast river. The danger is not only height. Moving water has force, and tsunami flooding can behave less like a breaking wave than a powerful inland current. It can push through streets, wrap around buildings, tear up pavement, and carry anything loose along with it. Even relatively shallow flow can knock a person off balance if it is moving quickly. Add debris, and the water becomes far more destructive. Cars, timber, boats, fuel tanks, and pieces of buildings can become part of the surge. The return flow can be just as hazardous, dragging objects and people back toward the sea. This river-like motion is one reason tsunami damage often looks chaotic. Water enters through roads and gaps, finds low channels, then changes direction as it rebounds from structures and terrain. The surface may not always look like the towering wall people imagine, but its strength can be overwhelming. A tsunami turns familiar ground into moving ocean, and that is enough. The ocean sometimes roars before a tsunami reaches land. Survivors have described sounds like a freight train, a low rumble, or the grinding of countless stones. The noise can come from water racing over reefs, dragging rocks, breaking structures, or forcing air through coastal spaces. It is not a universal warning, and people should never wait to hear it. But when it happens, it can be unforgettable. The sound reminds us that tsunamis are not only seen. They are felt through the ground, heard through the air, and recognized through strange changes in the behavior of the sea. In some places, the roar may arrive with the visible surge. In others, it may follow the withdrawal of water as the ocean begins rushing back. This sensory detail has become part of survivor testimony across different cultures and coastlines. It makes the event feel less like a distant scientific term and more like an encounter with moving earth energy. Before the water arrives, the shore itself may seem to speak. Tsunami evacuation signs save lives through simple visual memory. In a real emergency, people may not have time to read detailed instructions. Fear can narrow attention, streets can feel unfamiliar, and communication systems may be damaged or overloaded. This is why evacuation signs are designed to be instantly understood. A simple figure running toward higher ground can tell a person what to do, even if they do not speak the local language. In many coastal towns, these signs quietly shape memory, long before disaster strikes. A family may pass one on the way to the beach. A child may see one outside school. A visitor may notice arrows pointing inland, without thinking much about them. Then, when the ground shakes or the sea behaves strangely, that stored image can return with sudden importance. Good signs do not merely mark routes. They train the mind ahead of time. In that way, a small symbol on a post can become a bridge between confusion and survival. Natural warning signs can matter more than official alerts. Technology is powerful, but the ocean does not always wait for a message. In nearby events, the first wave can arrive before a phone alert, siren, or broadcast reaches everyone. That is why natural clues are so important. Strong or long ground shaking, a sudden retreat of the sea, a strange roar from the coast, or unusual movement in the water can all mean it is time to leave. These signs are direct messages from the environment itself. They do not need electricity, satellites, or mobile networks. For people living in tsunami zones, recognizing them can be the difference between hesitation and action. Official warnings still save many lives, especially when waves are traveling from far away. But local knowledge has a special urgency. When nature gives the warning first, people should not wait for confirmation. The safest response is to move quickly, climb high, and trust the signs written into the coastline. Strong coastal shaking can be a tsunami warning by itself. When an earthquake near the sea is powerful enough to make standing difficult, the warning may already have arrived. Coastal shaking can mean that a fault offshore has moved, and if that movement has displaced the seabed, water may already be spreading outward. In some communities, people are taught a simple idea. If the shaking is strong or lasts long, head for high ground as soon as it stops. This advice matters because local tsunamis can arrive in minutes. There may be no time for officials to measure the wave, run models, and send alerts. The earthquake becomes the alarm. It is an unsettling thought because it asks people to act while still shaken, confused, and worried about damage around them. Yet that fast decision can save lives. The safest route may not be toward home, family belongings, or the shore. It may be uphill, away from the coast, before the sea has time to reveal what happened offshore. Higher ground is often safer than any nearby building. A sturdy structure may look reassuring, but elevation is what truly matters when water begins moving inland. Tsunami flooding can arrive with debris, strong currents, and repeated surges that test walls, windows, and foundations. A building close to the shore might survive the shaking but still be exposed to the force of the water. Higher ground removes people from the path of flow altogether. That is why evacuation maps often direct communities toward hills, ridges, or inland slopes rather than simply pointing to strong-looking buildings. The goal is not comfort. It is distance from moving water and height above the expected flood level. In flat coastal regions, specially designed vertical evacuation structures can provide an alternative, but ordinary buildings are not always safe choices. The instinct to shelter indoors can be powerful. With tsunamis, the wiser instinct is often movement. Upward if possible, inland if necessary, and away from places where the ocean can reach. Vertical evacuation towers protect people where hills are absent. Some coastlines are too flat for traditional escape routes. There may be no bluff, ridge, or natural high ground within a reachable distance. In those places, communities can build their own refuge above the flood. A vertical evacuation tower is designed to stand within a tsunami hazard zone while giving people a platform high enough to survive the water below. These structures must be strong enough to resist shaking, debris impact, and powerful currents. Some are open platforms. Others are reinforced buildings, schools, or community centers with upper levels built for emergency refuge. Their purpose is simple but profound. They give people a place to climb when there is nowhere else to go. In a fast local event, even a few minutes can matter. A tower nearby can turn an impossible run inland into a reachable ascent. It is a reminder that good engineering does not only resist nature. Sometimes it creates time, height, and hope. Ancient Japanese stones warned villages not to build too low. Along parts of Japan's coast, old carved markers stand as messages from the dead to the living. Some were placed after devastating waves, marking how high the water reached and warning future generations to build above that line. Their words are direct, sometimes almost haunting. Do not build homes below this point. Remember the calamity of great tsunamis. These stones were not scientific instruments, yet they carried a kind of community memory that maps alone cannot hold. For decades, they watched over villages as people rebuilt, moved, forgot, or ignored them. In some places, settlements that respected the markers fared better when later waves came. The stones show how disaster knowledge can be preserved outside textbooks and laboratories. They are part warning, part memorial, and part conversation across time. A coastline may seem peaceful for a human lifetime, but the stone remembers longer. It tells anyone willing to listen where the sea has been before. Tsunami deposits preserve disasters long after memories fade. When a great wave floods inland, it can leave behind a thin layer of sand, shells, mud, or marine debris. To most people, that layer would seem ordinary or invisible. To a geologist, it can be evidence of an event that happened centuries ago. These deposits may be buried beneath soil, marsh plants, or later sediments, quietly waiting to be discovered. Their grains can reveal direction of flow, distance of flooding, and sometimes even the approximate size of the wave. In places where written records are short, these layers help scientists build longer histories of coastal danger. They show that a peaceful landscape may have been flooded many times before. Finding them is careful work. Researchers dig trenches, examine grain sizes, study tiny fossils, and compare the layer with known storm deposits. The result is a hidden archive beneath the ground. Long after witnesses are gone, the land can still hold the signature of the sea. Sand sheets inland can reveal forgotten waves from centuries ago. A clean sheet of beach sand lying far from the modern shoreline can tell a startling story. It may mean that seawater once carried coastal sediment inland and spread it across fields, forests, or wetlands. These sheets can be thin, sometimes only a finger's width, but their position is powerful evidence. Scientists look for clues that separate tsunami layers from storm deposits. A tsunami can move sand far inland, mix marine particles with landward mud, and leave patterns showing both inflow and retreat. By dating organic material above and below the layer, researchers can estimate when the wave struck. In the Pacific Northwest, such evidence helped reveal a massive Cascadia earthquake and tsunami in the year 1700, even before modern instruments existed. The sand becomes more than sand. It becomes a timestamp, a warning, and a record of water that crossed a boundary people assumed was safe. Beneath ordinary soil, an old coastline can speak again. Coastal marshes can keep hidden records of ancient tsunamis. Marshes are excellent keepers of quiet evidence because they build layer upon layer through time. Plants grow, die, and become peat. Mud settles. Tides leave traces. When a tsunami rushes across a marsh, it can interrupt that steady record with a sudden layer of sand or marine material. Sometimes the land also drops during the earthquake that caused the wave, changing a high marsh into a tidal flat almost instantly. The plants respond, and their remains become part of the evidence. Scientists can read these changes like pages in a damp, earthen book. Tiny organisms called diatoms may show whether water was fresh, brackish, or salty. Buried roots can show where the old surface once stood. Together, these clues reveal not just that a wave arrived, but that the whole coast may have shifted. A marsh may look still and soft from above, yet beneath it lies a precise memory of upheaval, flooding, and recovery. Tree rings can reveal land dropped during tsunami earthquakes. Trees do not need to understand earthquakes to record them. Along some coasts, forests have been killed when land suddenly sank during a great offshore rupture. Salt water entered the roots, tides reached places they had not reached before, and living trees died where they stood. Their trunks may remain as ghost forests, grey and weathered, still rooted in the ground. By studying the rings, scientists can tell when growth stopped. If many trees in the same area died in the same season, the pattern becomes powerful evidence. It can point to sudden coastal subsidence linked to a megathrust earthquake. In the Pacific Northwest, ghost forests helped confirm a huge event in the year 1700. The rings give the disaster a date, while the drowned landscape shows its physical effect. A tree can become a witness with no voice. Its final year of growth marks the moment the land dropped and the sea moved in. Oral traditions have preserved tsunami warnings for generations. Long before modern sensors and written hazard maps, coastal peoples carried disaster knowledge through stories. These accounts might describe the ocean retreating, ground shaking, villages moving uphill, or waves arriving with unforgettable power. To outsiders, such stories were sometimes treated as legend. Today, many scientists recognize that they may preserve real observations from past events. In the Pacific Northwest, indigenous accounts described great shaking and flooding long before geological evidence was fully understood by modern researchers. In Japan, Chile, the Solomon Islands, and many island cultures, memory has often traveled through elders, songs, place names, and cautionary tales. These traditions do more than record fear. They teach behavior. They explain where to go, what signs to notice, and why certain places deserve respect. A spoken warning can survive when buildings vanish and documents decay. Passed from one generation to the next, it becomes a living safety system, carried in human memory rather than stored in machines. Some animals seemed to flee before historic tsunami waves arrived. There are many reports of animals moving inland, climbing to higher ground, or behaving strangely before destructive waves reached shore. After the Indian Ocean disaster, stories spread of elephants pulling away from beaches and wildlife moving towards safer areas. It is difficult to prove exactly what the animals sensed. They may have reacted to ground vibrations, low-frequency sounds, changes in water movement, or the behavior of other creatures. Science treats these accounts carefully because memory after disaster can be imperfect. Still, the possibility is fascinating. Many animals detect signals humans easily miss. Birds sense pressure changes. Elephants communicate through vibrations. Marine creatures respond to subtle shifts in water. Whether or not animals can reliably warn us of tsunamis, their behavior reminds us that human perception is only one small window onto the world. The coastline may begin changing before we notice it. Other living beings may feel that change first, through senses tuned to a different range of reality. The Lisbon tsunami reshaped European thinking about earthquakes. On the 1st of November 1755, Lisbon was struck by a devastating earthquake. Fires followed, and then waves entered the city's waterfront. The disaster happened on All Saints' Day, when churches were crowded and candles were burning. Its impact was not only physical, it shook philosophy, religion, science, and politics across Europe. Thinkers asked why such suffering happened, and natural philosophers began seeking physical explanations for earthquakes and sea waves. The event helped push discussion away from purely supernatural interpretations and toward observation, mapping, and the study of Earth processes. Reports arrived from Portugal, Spain, North Africa, and across the Atlantic, showing that the disturbance had traveled far beyond one city. Lisbon became a turning point in how Europeans imagined natural disaster. It revealed that the ground and ocean could act together across enormous distances. In the ruins, a new kind of question took shape. Not only why did this happen, but how can we understand it before it happens again? Krakatoa's eruption sent tsunamis racing through Sunda Strait. In 1883, Krakatoa erupted with a violence that became famous around the world. The volcanic island collapsed and exploded in stages, disturbing the water between Java and Sumatra. Huge waves struck nearby coasts, destroying towns and carrying ships inland. The sound of the eruption traveled extraordinary distances, but the water did the deadliest work around the strait. Volcanic tsunamis can be especially complex because several processes may happen together. A crater can collapse. Explosive blasts can push water outward. Hot flows of ash and rock can plunge into the sea. Each action can add energy to the surrounding water. Krakatoa showed that a volcano does not have to sit quietly behind the coastline to become a marine hazard. When land, magma, and ocean meet, the boundary can fail in sudden and dramatic ways. The eruption also affected sunsets across the globe, but for nearby communities, its most immediate legacy was the sea rushing ashore. The Chile earthquake sent waves across the Pacific Ocean. In 1960, the largest earthquake ever recorded struck southern Chile. Its magnitude was so great that it changed scientific understanding of how much energy Earth's faults could release. The waves it generated did not remain near South America. They crossed the Pacific, reaching Hawaii, Japan, the Philippines, New Zealand, and other distant shores. In some places, the water arrived many hours after the shaking, which meant people far away faced danger from an event they had never felt. This was a powerful lesson in ocean-scale connection. A rupture along one continental margin could send consequences to islands and coastlines thousands of miles away. It also showed why international cooperation matters. No single country owns the ocean basin. Warnings, tide gauges, seismic networks, and communication links must work across borders. The Chile event is remembered not only for its size, but for the way it revealed the Pacific as one connected field of moving energy. Hawaii has been struck by tsunamis from faraway earthquakes. The islands sit in the middle of the Pacific, beautiful and isolated, but that isolation also places them within reach of waves from many directions. Earthquakes near Alaska, Chile, Japan, and the Aleutian Islands have all sent dangerous water toward Hawaiian shores. Hilo, on the island of Hawaii, has suffered especially severe damage because its bay can focus incoming energy. In 1946, waves generated near the Aleutians caused major destruction there. In 1960, waves from Chile brought tragedy again. These events helped shape modern tsunami warning systems and evacuation planning across the Pacific. Hawaii became a natural watch point, a place where distant ocean energy could arrive after traveling for hours. The history is striking because the source may be invisible beyond the horizon and beyond local memory of shaking. The sea can look calm for much of the day, while a signal from another edge of the ocean is already on its way. The Alaska earthquake created deadly waves across distant coastlines. On Good Friday in 1964, a giant earthquake ruptured beneath southern Alaska. The shaking caused local landslides and severe damage, but the water added another layer of disaster. Some waves struck nearby communities within minutes, while others traveled down the Pacific coast toward Canada, the United States, and beyond. Crescent City in Northern California suffered deadly flooding hours after the quake. This event showed how one earthquake can produce multiple tsunami hazards at once. Local waves may come from landslides triggered by shaking, while basin-traveling waves come from seafloor displacement along the fault. The timing, height, and behavior can vary greatly from place to place. Alaska's coastline, with its fjords, bays, and steep underwater slopes, is especially prone to complicated wave generation. The 1964 event remains a major case study because it linked ground rupture, coastal subsidence, harbor damage, distant impacts, and emergency communication into one vast lesson written across the North Pacific. The Tohoku tsunami overwhelmed some of Japan's strongest seawalls. Japan had invested heavily in coastal defenses, and many communities believed their barriers offered a strong shield. On the 11th of March 2011, the earthquake off northeastern Honshu generated waves larger than many designs had anticipated. In some places, water overtopped walls, poured through gates, scoured foundations, and moved inland with devastating force. The tragedy did not mean seawalls were useless. In several locations, they delayed flooding or reduced impact. But it revealed a hard truth about protective engineering. Barriers can lower risk without eliminating it. If people believe a wall makes evacuation unnecessary, the wall can create dangerous confidence. After Tohoku, Japan re-examined how to combine defenses with warnings, evacuation routes, land use planning, and public education. The event changed the conversation from protection alone to layered survival. A wall may stand between a town and the sea, but the most important defense is still a population ready to move when the warning comes. Fukushima's nuclear crisis began with tsunami flooding after earthquake shaking. The earthquake of 2011 caused automatic shutdowns at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant as designed. The greater crisis unfolded when the waves arrived and flooded critical backup systems. Without reliable cooling, reactor cores overheated, leading to meltdowns and hydrogen explosions. This chain of events revealed how a tsunami can turn a natural disaster into a technological emergency. Modern infrastructure often depends on hidden systems such as pumps, generators, switchgear, fuel tanks, and control rooms. If flooding disables those systems, consequences can spread far beyond the shoreline. Fukushima forced engineers and governments around the world to review flood protection at nuclear facilities and other critical sites. It also showed that hazard planning must consider combinations. An earthquake can cut power. A tsunami can block roads. Debris can slow response. The crisis became a global lesson in cascading risk. The water did not only damage buildings, it disrupted the systems needed to keep a complex technology safe. The Indian Ocean once had no basin-wide tsunami warning system. Before 2004, many Indian Ocean countries had seismic networks and local knowledge, but no coordinated warning system comparable to the Pacific's. This gap proved catastrophic when the Sumatra earthquake sent waves across the basin. In some distant places, there was enough travel time for warnings to help, but no effective system existed to deliver them widely and quickly. The disaster transformed regional priorities. Governments, scientists, and international organizations worked to build an Indian Ocean warning network using seismometers, tide gauges, deep ocean instruments, communication protocols, and public call. Education. The change was not only technological. Communities needed evacuation maps, drills, signs, and trust in alerts. The lesson was painfully clear. Detection is only the first step. A warning must reach people in a form they understand, and they must know what action to take. Today's systems are stronger because that earlier absence was exposed. The silence before the waves became a reason to build a louder, faster chain of warning. Modern warning centers watch earthquakes within minutes of rupture. When a major quake occurs near the ocean, specialists move quickly. Seismic instruments estimate its location, depth, magnitude, and fault behavior. Computers compare the event with known tsunami-generating patterns. Sea level gauges and deep ocean sensors help confirm whether water has actually been displaced. The first bulletins may be issued before all details are known, because waiting for perfect certainty can cost time. These centers balance speed with accuracy, which is one of the hardest challenges in disaster science. Warn too broadly, and people may become tired of alerts. Warn too narrowly, and someone may be left in danger. Around the Pacific and other basins, teams work through this uncertainty with constantly improving data. Their job is partly scientific and partly human. They must turn shaking recorded by instruments into practical guidance for coastlines. Behind every alert is a race between analysis and the sea, measured not in abstract numbers, but in minutes available for movement. Dart buoys measure deep ocean pressure changes from passing waves. Far offshore, a tsunami can be too broad and low to recognize by sight, so scientists listen through pressure. A sensor on the seabed measures the weight of the water above it with extraordinary precision. When a long wave passes, the water column becomes slightly heavier or lighter. That signal is sent acoustically to a surface buoy, then relayed by satellite to warning centers. The beauty of this system is that it observes the wave directly in deep water before it reaches land. Seismic data can suggest possibility, but pressure data can confirm reality. These instruments must survive storms, corrosion, deep ocean conditions, and long periods of isolation. They are quiet sentinels placed in strategic locations across ocean basins. Most people will never see one. Yet, in an emergency, data from a single buoy can sharpen forecasts for thousands of miles of coastline. A small change in pressure becomes a clearer picture of what the ocean is carrying. Seafloor cables may become future tsunami listening networks. Across the ocean floor lie communication cables that carry enormous amounts of global internet traffic. Scientists are exploring ways these existing lines, and future dedicated cables could also sense changes in the marine environment. Tiny variations in strain, pressure, temperature, or light signals inside fiber optic cables may reveal earthquakes, seafloor movement, or passing waves. The idea is exciting because the cables already cross regions where instruments are sparse. Turning them into sensors could create long listening lines through the deep ocean. Instead of relying only on isolated stations, future networks might detect disturbances along entire cable routes. There are technical and legal challenges, since communication infrastructure was not originally built as a scientific instrument. But the potential is remarkable. The same hidden threads that connect human voices, messages, and images across continents might one day help warn coastal communities. Beneath the waves, the Internet's backbone could become part of the planet's nervous system. Satellites can sometimes see tsunami waves crossing the ocean. From space, the open ocean looks vast and smooth, but careful instruments can detect tiny changes in sea surface height. Radar altimeters on satellites have occasionally measured tsunami waves as they crossed deep water. These observations are not yet the main tool for rapid warning, because satellites only pass over certain tracks at certain times. Still, they provide valuable proof and data. Seeing a tsunami from orbit helps scientists test models, estimate energy, and understand how waves spread across basins. The image is almost surreal. A disturbance created by moving rock beneath the sea becomes a subtle line on the surface, then a signal captured by a machine hundreds of miles above Earth. It shows how connected modern observation has become. Seafloor pressure sensors look upward. Satellites look downward. Coastal gauges watch the shore. Together, they turn an event too large for any one viewpoint into something measurable. Even a wave barely visible at sea can leave a signature in space. GPS stations can reveal sudden seafloor movement during earthquakes. On land near subduction zones, high-precision GPS stations track the slow motion of the crust day after day. Most of the time, the changes are tiny. During a major earthquake, the ground can jump by feet in seconds. That motion helps scientists understand how the fault slipped offshore. Even if the rupture happened beneath the sea, nearby land stations can record the elastic response of the plate. Some coastal stations also show where the land rose or sank, which affects flooding danger. This information can improve tsunami forecasts because it reveals the actual shape and size of the earthquake more directly than magnitude alone. In Japan, Chile, and other active regions, real-time geodetic data has become an important part of hazard science. The concept is astonishingly precise. Instruments fixed to the ground can watch a continent bend, strain, and rebound. When the Earth moves suddenly, GPS does not just help us navigate roads. It helps us read the earthquake's body. Computer models forecast where tsunami energy may arrive next. Once scientists estimate how the ocean was disturbed, models can simulate the wave's journey across complex seafloor terrain. Depth matters because it controls speed. Underwater ridges, trenches, shelves, and islands can bend, focus, or scatter energy. A model divides the ocean into many small calculation areas, then advances the wave step by step through time. The result can show likely arrival times, expected amplitudes, and regions of greater concern. These forecasts are updated as real measurements come in from buoys and tide gauges. Modeling is not guesswork, but it is not magic either. The quality depends on accurate earthquake information, good bathymetry, and rapid data flow. Still, it gives emergency managers something incredibly valuable. It turns an unseen disturbance into a map of possible futures. A coastline may have hours to prepare for a distant event, and models help decide which harbors, beaches, and low-lying districts should move first. Tsunami travel time maps guide warnings across whole ocean basins. These maps show how long it may take waves from a given source region to reach different coastlines. The lines often spread across the ocean like ripples on a chart, marking hours of travel rather than distance alone. They are based on water depth because waves move faster in deeper ocean and slow as they enter shallower areas. For warning centers, these maps help organize urgency. Nearby communities may need immediate evacuation. More distant shores may have time for confirmation, official messaging, road control, and harbor actions. The maps also make the hazard easier to understand for the public. A person can see that a wave from Chile may reach Hawaii before Japan, or that an Alaska source may matter quickly to parts of the North American coast. The ocean becomes a clock. Not a simple clock, but one shaped by trenches, basins, and continental shelves. Every line on the map represents time that must be used wisely. Sirens are only useful when communities know what they mean. A loud alarm can get attention, but attention is not the same as action. If people do not know whether a siren means evacuate, shelter, test, fire, storm, or some other danger, confusion can waste precious minutes. This is why public education matters as much as equipment. Communities need regular testing, clear signage, school lessons, visitor information, and repeated reminders of what to do. The sound should connect immediately to a practiced response. Move inland. Go uphill. Follow marked routes. Stay away until the all clear. In tourist areas, the challenge is even greater because many people may not speak the local language or know the hazard history. Sirens are part of a communication chain, not the whole chain. They must be paired with memory. A warning that cannot be understood is only noise. But when the meaning is known, the sound can cut through panic and turn a scattered crowd into people moving with purpose. Practice drills turn frightening warnings into remembered movement. During a real emergency, the mind can freeze. People may search for family, gather possessions, look for confirmation, or simply hesitate because the situation feels unreal. Drills reduce that uncertainty by turning decisions into familiar motions. A school that practices walking to high ground teaches children not just where to go, but what the route feels like. A coastal neighborhood that rehearses evacuation learns which paths are steep, which intersections clog, and who may need help. Drills also reveal problems before disaster exposes them. A sign may be hidden by trees. A route may be too slow. A meeting point may be unsafe. The practice itself becomes community knowledge. When warnings come, people do not have to invent a plan from fear. They follow a path already held in the body. This is one of the most hopeful parts of tsunami safety. Preparation can make an extraordinary situation feel, for a few crucial minutes, like something people have already done before. Tsunami-ready communities prepare before the sea ever moves. Preparedness is not a single sign or siren. It is a whole system built ahead of time. Communities recognized as tsunami-ready identify hazard zones, create evacuation maps, install public information boards, establish warning procedures, and teach residents how to respond. They also plan for visitors, because coastal towns often fill with people who do not know local risks. The strongest programs involve schools, emergency managers, scientists, businesses, and families working together before anything happens. This kind of readiness does not mean a place is safe from all damage. It means people have reduced confusion. They know routes, warnings, meeting places, and natural signs. The phrase itself carries an important idea. The sea may move suddenly, but preparation, should not. It must already be in place. A community that has thought carefully before the event is not helpless when the water changes. It has rehearsed a shared answer to a question no one wants the ocean to ask. Mangroves can soften some waves but cannot stop giant tsunamis. Their tangled roots create friction, break up fast-moving water, and trap debris before it travels farther inland. In smaller events, or along the weaker edges of larger floods, a healthy mangrove belt can reduce flow speed and protect soil from being stripped away. That protection is not magic, and it has limits. A truly enormous surge can tear through trees, uproot trunks, and carry branches forward as debris. Still, the presence of mangroves can change what happens at the margins of a disaster. They can buy time, absorb energy, and reduce the violence of water reaching farms or villages behind them. They also provide everyday benefits, sheltering young fish, storing carbon, and holding coastlines together against erosion. Their value lies in being part of a layered defense. Sensors, evacuation routes, strong planning, and natural barriers all work together. A forest at the shore cannot promise safety, but it can make the sea's arrival less sudden and less fierce. Coral reefs may reduce wave energy under the right conditions. A reef is more than a living structure of coral animals. It is also a rough, shallow platform that can force incoming water to lose strength before reaching shore. As waves pass across uneven coral, some energy breaks, scatters, and turns into turbulence. The effect depends on the reef's shape, depth, width, and health. A broad reef flat can offer more protection than a narrow or deeply submerged one. Living coral also builds and repairs the structure over time, creating habitat while influencing coastal physics. But reefs are vulnerable. Warming seas, pollution, destructive fishing, and disease can weaken them, leaving coastlines more exposed. During a powerful tsunami, a reef will not simply stop the ocean. The wave's long energy can still pass over it. Yet in some settings, reefs can reduce impact and limit erosion. They remind us that protection is not always made of concrete. Sometimes it is grown, slowly, by tiny animals working across centuries. Sand dunes can become natural barriers against coastal surges. A dune may look like a soft pile of sand, but in the right place, it can act as a raised shield. When water pushes inland, the dune's height can slow or block shallow flooding. Its mass can absorb some force, especially if it is stabilized by grasses and deep-rooted plants. Those plants matter because loose sand is easily carved away, while a living dune is stitched together by roots. During extreme flooding, dunes can be cut through, flattened, or carried inland. Even then, they may reduce the first rush of water behind them. Coastal managers sometimes restore dunes because they protect both wildlife and human communities. They are dynamic features, shaped by wind, waves, vegetation, and storms. A healthy dune is not a wall. It moves, grows, erodes, and rebuilds. That flexibility is part of its strength. It belongs to the coastline, and it helps create a buffer between everyday life and the sea's more violent moods. Wetlands can absorb debris and slow incoming water. Where marshes, lagoons, and tidal flats spread across a coast, water has to move through plants, channels, mud, and uneven ground. That friction can reduce speed, and in some cases, it can capture floating material before it reaches homes or roads. A wetland is not an absolute barrier, especially against a large, fast, deep surge. But it can change the character of flooding. Instead of racing across a hard, flat surface, water is forced into a messy landscape that resists motion. Wetlands also recover in ways built environments often cannot. Sediment settles, plants regrow. Channels shift. Their protective role is only one part of their importance. They filter water, store carbon, shelter birds and fish, and support coastal food webs. When they are drained or paved over, communities lose more than scenery. They lose a flexible safety margin. A marsh may look fragile from a distance, but when the sea begins moving, its complexity becomes a form of quiet strength. Ports often amplify tsunami currents in dangerous ways. A harbor is designed to shelter ships from ordinary waves, but its shape can create surprising problems during a tsunami. Long basins, narrow entrances, seawalls, docks, and dredged channels can focus water into fast currents. Instead of simply rising and falling, the harbor may begin to surge sideways, spin in eddies, or pulse in repeated motions. Boats can snap mooring lines. Shipping containers can shift. Fuel spills and collisions can add new hazards to the flooding. A tsunami that seems modest on an open beach may produce powerful movement inside a port because the geometry traps and redirects energy. This is one reason maritime warnings often include instructions for vessels. Large ships may be safer in deep water if there is time to leave, while small craft near shore may be at risk even after the visible wave has passed. Ports are gateways of trade and movement, yet during a tsunami they can become echo chambers where the ocean's energy is concentrated. Harbors can keep sloshing long after the first wave. The technical word is psych, but the idea is easy to picture. When water enters an enclosed or partly enclosed basin, it can rock back and forth like liquid in a bathtub. A tsunami can set that motion going inside bays, marinas, and ports. Even after the first arrival, the water may continue to rise, fall, reverse direction, and accelerate through narrow gaps. This can last for many hours, which makes returning too soon dangerous. People may see calm between surges and think the event is over. Then the basin responds again, pulling boats, docks, and debris into motion. Each harbor has its own rhythm, depending on depth, length, entrance shape, and surrounding coastline. Some are especially prone to strong oscillations. That individuality is why local planning matters. One town's waterfront may behave very differently from another's during the same event. The wave from far away becomes local music, and the harbor keeps playing after the first note has faded. Tsunami currents can tear boats from their moorings. A vessel tied securely for ordinary tides and storms may not be prepared for water reversing direction with unusual speed. Mooring lines are built for certain loads, angles, and conditions. During a tsunami, currents can pull from unexpected directions, lift hulls, slam them against docks, or drag them into other boats. The danger is not limited to large waves overtopping land. Even a moderate rise in water level can create fierce horizontal motion in marinas and channels. Boat owners may feel tempted to rush toward the waterfront to protect property, but that can be extremely dangerous. The safer decision is made before the event, with harbor plans, deep water procedures, and clear rules for when to leave vessels alone. Boats are replaceable. People are not. After many tsunamis, damaged harbors show a striking pattern of twisted docks, broken pilings, and vessels piled in strange places. It is water in motion, not water height alone, that does the work. Bridges may fail when water carries cars and debris. The structure itself may be strong enough to stand against ordinary flow, but a tsunami brings moving impact. Vehicles, logs, storage tanks, boats, and pieces of buildings can strike supports with enormous force. Water can also scour sediment from around foundations, leaving columns less supported than they appear. A bridge that survives the first minutes may weaken as repeated surges pull at its base and load it from changing directions. Bridges are crucial during evacuation, which makes their vulnerability especially important. If a route depends on a low coastal crossing, planners must ask, what happens if it becomes blocked or damaged? The same structure that connects communities every day can become a choke point during an emergency. Engineers study past failures to design stronger bridges, protect foundations, and plan alternatives. The lesson is sobering. A tsunami does not only flood roads. It attacks the links between places, turning familiar paths into fragile threads at exactly the moment people need them most. Floating debris can make shallow tsunami water extremely destructive. A person might imagine danger only when water is deep, but shallow flow can become lethal when it carries heavy objects. A few feet of moving water can lift cars, break fences, and push furniture through walls. Add broken timber, glass, metal, and fuel tanks, and the flood becomes a moving field of impacts. The debris also changes the water's behavior. It can jam against buildings, block streets, or form temporary dams that suddenly release. In videos of past events, some of the most frightening scenes are not towering waves, but dark water filled with the pieces of ordinary life. Houses, boats, trees, and vehicles move together as if the shoreline has dissolved. This is why evacuation matters, even when predicted heights sound survivable. The number alone cannot capture what the water may carry. A tsunami turns the built environment into part of the hazard. Everything not anchored firmly can become a tool in the sea's hands. Salt water can poison farmland long after flooding disappears. When seawater spreads across fields, the visible flood may last only hours, but the salt it leaves behind can linger in soil. Many crops are sensitive to salinity. Too much salt makes it difficult for roots to draw in water, even when the ground is moist. Leaves yellow, growth slows, and harvests can fail. Farmers may need rain, flushing, drainage, soil treatment, and time before the land becomes productive again. In low-lying deltas and coastal plains, this aftermath can be devastating because agriculture is often close to the sea. The damage may be uneven. One field recovers quickly, while another stays salty because of poor drainage or heavier sediment. Tsunami recovery is therefore not only about rebuilding houses and roads. It is also about restoring the hidden chemistry of the ground. A wave can pass in a single day, yet leave a season of hunger behind. The land remembers the ocean in crystals too small to see at first glance. Tsunamis can contaminate wells with seawater and sewage. After flooding, a community may stand beside water it cannot safely drink. Wells can be invaded by saltwater, mud, fuel, chemicals, dead animals, or waste from damaged septic systems. Pipes may crack during the earthquake that came before the wave. Storage tanks may float away. Floodwater can mix everything together and then seep into the sources people depend on. This creates a second emergency after the visible danger has passed. Clean drinking water becomes one of the most urgent needs for survivors. Testing, pumping, disinfection, and sometimes complete replacement may be required before wells are safe again. The problem can be especially hard in rural areas or islands where supplies must arrive by boat or aircraft. A tsunami is usually imagined as a wall of water coming in, but recovery often depends on water of another kind. Safe water for drinking, washing, cooking, and healing. The sea's reach does not end at the floodline. It can enter the ground and the body's needs. Coastal forests sometimes show exactly how far waves reached. After a major flood, the landscape may carry a visible boundary. On one side, trees stand green. On the other, branches are broken, bark is stripped, and leaves are browned by salt. Debris can hang in trunks high above the ground, marking the water's passage like a rough measuring line. Scientists and survey teams use these clues to estimate inundation distance and flow depth, especially where instruments were absent. A forest can record the waves' reach in broken limbs, tilted stems, scoured roots, and trapped objects. The pattern may also reveal direction, since vegetation bends and debris points along the path of moving water. In time, new growth may soften the evidence, but immediately afterward, the forest becomes a map. This matters for future planning. Knowing how far the water traveled helps improve hazard models and evacuation zones. The trees do not speak, yet their injuries can tell researchers where the sea went, how high it climbed, and where danger may return. Tsunami boulders can be thrown inland by extraordinary water force. On some coastlines, enormous rocks sit far above normal wave reach. They may weigh many tons, and their position raises an exciting question. Were they moved by storms or by tsunamis? Scientists study their shape, size, location, and surrounding deposits to understand what kind of force could have carried them. In some cases, the evidence suggests that only an exceptional wave could lift, roll, or slide such a mass inland. These boulders become monuments of past violence. They may have been torn from reefs, cliffs, or seabeds, then carried like pebbles by water moving with great depth and speed. Distinguishing storm boulders from tsunami boulders is not always simple, because powerful cyclones can also move large rocks. But when the clues align, the result is awe-inspiring. A quiet stone in a field may not be quiet at all. It may be the frozen footprint of a wave strong enough to rearrange the edge of a continent. Some island legends describe waves that swallowed whole settlements. Across ocean cultures, stories of overwhelming water appear again and again. Some speak of villages lost beneath the sea. Others describe ancestors fleeing uphill, canoes carried into forests, or sacred places abandoned after the shore changed. These accounts often blend history, warning, spirituality, and identity. They may not read like modern scientific reports, but they can preserve real memories of past coastal disasters. Islands are especially vulnerable because land is limited, and communities often live close to the water. A wave that floods one side of an island may reshape where people build, travel, and worship for generations. When scientists compare oral traditions with geological evidence, surprising connections sometimes emerge. A sand layer, a displaced boulder, or a drowned site may echo a story kept alive through families. Such legends remind us that disaster memory is not only written in documents. It can live in chants, names, taboos, and the decision to settle a little higher than before. The Storegga landslide sent a tsunami across ancient northern Europe. Around 8,000 years ago, a vast section of seafloor collapsed off the coast of Norway. The underwater landslide moved a tremendous volume of sediment down the continental slope, disturbing the sea above it. The resulting waves reached parts of Norway, Scotland, the Faroe Islands, and other North Atlantic shores. At the time, people living along these coasts were hunter-gatherers, and some low-lying landscapes were very different from today. One area, often called Doggerland, connected parts of Britain and mainland Europe before rising seas swallowed it. The tsunami did not create that entire loss by itself, but it may have devastated communities and ecosystems along vulnerable shores. Storegga is a reminder that prehistoric people faced hazards we can reconstruct only through layers of sediment, ancient coastlines, and underwater mapping. It also shows that great tsunamis are not confined to the Pacific. The North Atlantic has its own deep memory of sudden collapse and racing water. Underwater landslides can create tsunamis without major earthquake shaking. Sediment builds up on continental slopes, volcanic flanks, and fjord walls over long periods. If that material becomes unstable, it can suddenly slide downward under gravity. The trigger might be a moderate earthquake, rapid sediment loading, gas release, erosion, or volcanic activity. When the slide moves quickly, it pushes and pulls the water above it, creating waves. These events can be difficult to warn for because there may be little or no strong shaking felt on land. The source can also be close to shore, leaving very little time to respond. Landslide tsunamis are often most dangerous near their origin, where wave heights can be intense and arrival almost immediate. Their energy may fade faster than earthquake-generated ocean-wide waves, but for nearby communities, the difference offers little comfort. The hidden slope beneath the water becomes the critical landscape. It can fail without ceremony, turning sediment that settled quietly for ages into a sudden engine of motion. Volcanic islands can collapse and push seas outward suddenly. Many volcanic islands grow steeply from the seafloor, layer by layer, eruption by eruption. Over time, parts of their flanks can become unstable. Rock is weakened by heat, alteration, cracks, earthquakes, and gravity. If a large section collapses into the sea, it can displace water in a violent pulse. Geologists have found evidence of ancient flank collapses around islands such as Hawaii and the Canary Islands, where debris fields spread across the ocean floor. Most collapses are not civilization-ending catastrophes, but local and regional hazards can be severe. The drama lies in the island's double nature. It appears solid from the beach, with cliffs, slopes, and villages. Yet underwater, its sides may descend for miles into darkness. A failure can begin where no one can see it. Volcanic islands are built by creation, but they are also shaped by removal. Sometimes the mountain gives part of itself back to the ocean all at once. The Anak Krakatau collapse produced a tsunami with little warning. In December of 2018, part of Anak Krakatau's volcanic flank slid into the sea during an eruptive period. The movement generated waves that struck coastlines along the Sunda Strait, including parts of Java and Sumatra. Many people did not receive a typical earthquake warning because the source was not a large tectonic quake. The event exposed a difficult problem. Warning systems built mainly around seismic triggers can miss or delay recognition of tsunamis caused by volcanic collapse. Nighttime conditions, local geography, and the absence of strong ground shaking made the danger even harder to grasp. The disaster became a case study in how coastal risk can emerge from more than one pathway. A volcano can be active, unstable, and close to populated shores. Monitoring must therefore include visual observations, deformation, sea level instruments, and public awareness of unusual coastal changes. Anak Krakatau showed that a wave can arrive from a collapsing mountain, not only from a rupturing fault. Pyroclastic flows can enter water and generate powerful waves. During explosive eruptions, dense currents of hot gas, ash, and rock can race down a volcano at terrifying speed. If such a flow reaches the sea, a lake, or a bay, it can displace water abruptly. The interaction is violent. Hot material plunges into water, steam expands, sediment surges outward, and waves may spread from the impact zone. This process has contributed to deadly volcanic tsunamis in history. It is especially dangerous because eruptions may already be creating ashfall, darkness, panic, and communication problems. People may focus on the volcano while the water becomes another threat. The physics differs from a landslide made of cold rock, yet the essential idea is similar. A fast-moving mass enters water, and the water must move. Coastal volcanoes therefore create layered hazards. Fire and ash above, unstable slopes on land, and sudden waves at the shore. The boundary between volcano and ocean is one of Earth's most dramatic meeting places. Glacier calving can trigger localized tsunamis inside narrow fjords. In polar and mountain regions, glaciers sometimes end in deep water. When a large block of ice breaks away, it can fall, roll, or surge into a fjord, pushing water outward. Usually the waves are local, but inside a narrow basin they can be surprisingly dangerous. The steep walls reflect energy, and the confined water has little room to spread. Tour boats, kayakers, research camps, and coastal infrastructure can be at risk if they are too close. Calving is a natural part of glacier life, but warming conditions can change glacier stability and the frequency of large ice failures in some regions. The scene can be deceptively beautiful. Blue ice towers over dark water. Cracks echo across the fjord. Then a piece the size of a building breaks loose, and the landscape changes in seconds. These events remind us that tsunami science is not only about tropical beaches or tectonic trenches. Even ice can shove water hard enough to become a hazard. Lituya Bay's giant wave began with rockfall into deep water. The Alaskan event of 1958 is often remembered for its staggering run-up, but the source was very specific. A huge mass of rock fell from a mountainside into a narrow bay with deep water close to shore. That geometry mattered. The falling rock transferred energy almost directly into the inlet, producing a wave that surged up the opposite slope and stripped vegetation to an extraordinary height. The bay's shape then guided the water outward, where boats were caught in chaos. This was not a typical far-traveling tsunami. It was a concentrated impact inside a confined basin. The scars on the mountainside and the treeless trimline became physical evidence of the water's reach. Lituya Bay teaches a powerful lesson about local hazards. A wave does not need to cross an ocean to be historic. Sometimes the most extreme height comes from the exact combination of steep rock, deep water, sudden collapse, and a place shaped like a trap. Fjord tsunamis can climb cliffs because water has nowhere else to go. A fjord is a long, narrow, steep-sided valley flooded by the sea. Its beauty comes from the same geometry that can make waves dangerous. If a landslide, rock avalanche, or ice fall enters the water, the energy is trapped between high walls. Instead of spreading evenly across an open coast, the water can surge along the basin and run up slopes with remarkable height. Reflections from the sides can add complexity, sending waves back and forth. In some places, communities sit on small fans of land at the water's edge, with mountains rising behind them. That leaves limited escape routes. Norway, Greenland, Alaska, and other fjord regions study these risks carefully, especially where unstable slopes loom above deep water. The hazard can feel counterintuitive because fjords seem sheltered from the open ocean. Yet shelter from storms does not mean shelter from displacement. In a narrow valley filled with water, a falling mountainside can turn scenery into a channel of force. Lake tsunamis can happen far from any ocean. A body of water does not need to be salty, tidal, or connected to the sea to produce a destructive surge. Lakes can be disturbed by landslides, volcanic activity, earthquakes, underwater slope failures, or sudden atmospheric changes. In mountain regions, a rockfall into a reservoir or glacial lake can send water over banks or dams. In volcanic lakes, slope collapse or explosive activity can displace water close to shore. The scale is usually smaller than ocean basin events, but the local danger can be intense because communities may be very near the source. People often feel safe beside lakes because they lack surf and tides. That calm can be misleading. A steep hillside above a narrow lake may be enough to create a sudden wave. Engineers pay close attention to reservoirs for this reason. If a large slide enters the water, overtopping can threaten dams and downstream valleys. Even inland, water can answer sudden movement with surprising power. The Great Lakes can experience weather-driven meteotsunamis. The Great Lakes are vast enough to behave like inland seas, and under the right weather conditions, their water can surge in ways that resemble small tsunamis. These events are not caused by earthquakes. They are driven by fast-moving changes in air pressure and wind associated with storms. If the atmospheric disturbance travels at a speed that matches the movement of waves in the lake, energy can build. Harbors and shorelines may then see sudden rises, strong currents, or rapid water level changes. People fishing, swimming, or walking near breakwalls can be caught off guard because the sky may not look especially dramatic at the exact location. The source might be a storm system moving elsewhere across the lake. Meteotsunamis have been documented in places such as Lake Michigan and Lake Erie. They show that tsunami-like behavior is broader than many people realize. Water responds not only to moving rock, but also to the invisible weight and motion of air. Meteotsunamis are caused by air pressure jumps and fast storms. Imagine the atmosphere pressing down on the ocean surface like an unseen hand. Usually that pressure changes gently, but when a sharp pressure jump races across water, it can push the surface into motion. If the weather system moves at just the right speed, it keeps feeding energy into the wave, much like a person timing pushes on a swing. Wind can strengthen the effect, and coastal shape can amplify it further. The result may be a sudden rise or fall in water level that arrives with little connection to local tides. These events are usually smaller than major seismic tsunamis, but they can still be dangerous in harbors, beaches, and enclosed bays. Their study sits at the intersection of meteorology and oceanography. The trigger is in the sky, but the consequence arrives at the shore. Meteotsunamis remind us that the sea is sensitive to forces we cannot see. A moving pocket of air can become a moving pulse of water. Asteroid impacts could create tsunamis on a planetary scale. If a large object from space struck an ocean, it would displace water with explosive force. The immediate effects would depend on the impactor's size, speed, angle, and location. Water would be blasted upward and outward. Steam, debris, shock waves, and crater formation would add to the chaos. Near the impact, the waves could be enormous. Farther away, their behavior would become more complex as energy spread, broke across continental shelves, and interacted with coastlines. Scientists model these scenarios because Earth has been struck before, and it will be struck again on some scale. Most incoming objects are small and burn up harmlessly, but rare large impacts are part of planetary history. An ocean impact is not automatically worse than a land impact in every way, but it introduces the possibility of global or ocean-wide wave effects. It is a reminder that tsunami science stretches beyond everyday geology. Sometimes the thing that moves the sea could fall from the sky. Ancient impact layers may preserve traces of enormous ocean waves. When scientists study rocks from the time of major impacts, they sometimes find chaotic deposits that suggest violent water movement. Layers may contain broken shells, ripped up seafloor material, mixed sediments, and debris carried far from its original setting. Around the boundary linked with the end of the dinosaurs, some sites preserve evidence of massive disturbances in ancient seas. Interpreting these layers is challenging because impact events create many overlapping processes. Earthquakes, landslides, atmospheric blasts, and waves may all occur close together. Still, the deposits offer a way to investigate disasters from deep time. No human saw those waves, yet the rocks may hold fragments of their motion. A bed of jumbled sediment can become a fossil of catastrophe. It tells us that the ocean has not only responded to Earth's internal forces, it has also responded to cosmic interruption. In those ancient layers, geology becomes a detective story, and the shoreline of the past is reconstructed from wreckage. Mars may hold evidence of ancient tsunami-shaped shorelines. Today, Mars is dry, cold and thin-aired, but some scientists argue that parts of its northern plains may once have held large bodies of water. If an ancient ocean existed there, asteroid impacts or landslides could have generated enormous waves. Certain Martian landforms have been interpreted as possible tsunami deposits, including lobed margins, boulder-rich flows, and features that appear to have surged across old terrain. The idea remains debated because Mars evidence is remote and complex. Wind, ice, lava, and mud flows can create shapes that may mimic one another. Still, the possibility is thrilling. It would mean tsunami science could help read the history of another world. A wave on Mars would not be a human disaster, but a clue to climate, water, and planetary change. It would suggest that shorelines, if they existed, were not always calm edges of ancient seas. They may have been reshaped by impacts under a sky very different from our own. Tsunamis can reveal how coastlines move during hidden earthquakes. After a major event, scientists do not study the water alone. They also examine how the land changed. Some coasts rise, leaving marine life stranded above its usual zone. Others sink, allowing tides to flood forests, fields, or roads that were previously dry. These vertical movements help reconstruct what happened on the fault offshore. The tsunami becomes one part of a larger geological message. Its height and reach are connected to how the seabed moved, while the altered shoreline shows how the crust responded. In some regions, repeated patterns of uplift and subsidence reveal cycles of strain and release that stretch far beyond written history. This is especially valuable where the earthquake source lies underwater and cannot be inspected directly. A barnacle line, a drowned marsh, or a newly raised reef can become evidence. The coast is like a measuring instrument at the edge of the sea. When the earthquake is hidden below water, the shoreline may still tell the truth. Some tsunami earthquakes rupture gently but move huge water volumes. These unusual events challenge intuition because they may not produce extreme shaking on land. Their rupture can be slower, lasting longer, and releasing energy in a way that feels less violent to people nearby. Yet if the movement occurs near the shallow part of a subduction zone, it can lift a broad area of seafloor very effectively. The result may be a wave that is much larger than expected from the felt shaking. This mismatch has caused deadly surprises in the past. People use their bodies as instruments during earthquakes. If shaking feels moderate, they may assume the threat is moderate too. Tsunami earthquakes break that rule. Their danger is not the sharpness of motion, but the amount of water quietly displaced. For scientists, they are important because they reveal different styles of fault behavior. For coastal communities, they carry a simple lesson. Long shaking near the shore deserves respect, even if it does not feel violently strong. Shallow sea floor ruptures often create the most dangerous waves. The location of fault movement matters enormously. If slip happens deep beneath the crust, much of its motion may be absorbed before reaching the ocean floor. If slip reaches close to the trench, where the fault lies beneath shallower sediments and water, it can deform the seabed more directly. That direct movement can displace a large amount of water and generate stronger waves. The shallowest part of subduction zones was once thought to be too weak or soft to store much strain. Modern events have shown that it can still play a major role in tsunami generation. This has changed how scientists view coastal risk. They now pay close attention to whether rupture might extend all the way toward the trench. The difference can decide whether a coastline faces damaging currents or catastrophic flooding. In tsunami science, depth below the seafloor is not a minor detail. It can be the difference between a frightening earthquake and a historic ocean disaster. A tsunami's speed depends on ocean depth beneath it. In deep water, the wave can race with astonishing speed, because the entire water column is involved in the motion. The deeper the ocean, the faster the energy travels. This is not because individual drops of water are sprinting across the sea. Most of the water moves in small circles or back and forth motions while the energy passes through. The depth controls that energy like the length of a pendulum controls its swing. Over abyssal plains, where the seafloor lies miles below the surface, the wave can move at the pace of an aircraft. Over continental shelves, where the bottom rises toward land, the same wave slows dramatically. This simple relationship helps warning centers estimate arrival times across whole basins. The sea becomes a moving clock, governed by the shape of the hidden world below. Every trench, ridge, and shelf changes the timing, which means the seafloor quietly guides the story long before the wave reaches shore. Waves slow down and grow taller as water shallows. As a tsunami approaches land, the front of the wave begins to feel the rising seafloor first. It slows, while the energy behind it continues pushing forward from deeper water. That compression forces the water upward and can also shorten the distance between wave crests. The process is why a barely noticeable change in deep ocean can become dangerous near the coast. It is not a simple swelling, like air filling a balloon. It is a transformation of speed into height, depth into force, and hidden energy into visible flooding. The shape of the seabed controls how dramatic this change becomes. A broad, shallow shelf can give the wave more time to build and deform. A steep coast may produce different behavior, with strong currents and sudden rises. This is one reason tsunami forecasts require detailed maps of underwater terrain. The wave's final form is written partly in the coastline, but also in the submerged slope it crosses. Refraction can bend tsunami energy around islands and headlands. When different parts of a wave travel over different depths, they move at different speeds. One section may slow as it reaches shallow water, while another continues faster through a deeper channel. This difference bends the wave's path, a process called refraction. It is the same broad idea that bends light through glass, but here it happens with ocean energy and seafloor shape. Refraction can wrap waves around islands, redirect them toward unexpected shores, or reduce energy in places that seem exposed. This is why two nearby beaches can experience very different effects from the same event. One cove may be hit hard, while another lies in a kind of shadow. Headlands, reefs, banks, and submarine valleys can all alter the pattern. To understand a tsunami, scientists cannot just draw straight lines from the source. They must follow how the moving energy responds to the underwater landscape. The ocean does not travel blindly. It bends around the hidden architecture beneath it. Bays shaped like funnels can focus tsunami power inland. Some coastlines are naturally arranged to concentrate incoming water. A wide mouth gathers energy, then narrows toward the head of the bay, forcing water into a smaller space. As the channel tightens, flow can rise, accelerate, and push farther inland than it would along an open beach. The effect can be especially dangerous when the bay's length and depth also encourage resonance, making the water oscillate with greater strength. Communities at the ends of such bays may face hazards that are not obvious from a simple shoreline map. The surrounding land may look protected, even sheltered, while the geometry quietly aims the water toward one point. Historic disasters have shown that bay shape can turn a regional wave into a local catastrophe. This is why hazard maps must be local, detailed, and specific. A tsunami is not spread evenly like paint across a coast. It is shaped, squeezed, and focused by every curve it meets. Submarine canyons can guide waves toward unexpected coastal targets. Beneath some coastlines, deep valleys cut across the continental shelf. These submarine canyons may have been carved by ancient rivers, sediment flows, or long geological processes now hidden under the sea. During a tsunami, they can influence how energy moves toward land. Because waves travel faster in deeper water, a canyon can act like a pathway that preserves speed and directs energy toward a particular section of coast. The result may surprise people who expect the nearest point to the source to be the hardest hit. A community aligned with an underwater canyon may receive stronger currents or higher water than nearby areas. Scientists study these features with sonar and bathymetric maps because surface views are not enough. A calm bay or ordinary beach may sit above a deep channel that matters during rare events. The coastline's risk is partly determined by landscapes no one can see from shore, valleys without sunlight that still guide the ocean's force. The same tsunami can spare one beach and destroy another. This unevenness is one of the reasons these events can feel so bewildering afterward. People may hear that a neighboring town escaped with minor flooding, while another, only a short distance away, suffered severe damage. The difference can come from seafloor depth, coastal angle, bay shape, reefs, dunes, buildings, river mouths, or even the timing of each incoming pulse. A wave arriving at high tide may reach farther than one arriving at low tide. A shoreline facing the incoming energy directly may experience more force than one partly shielded by an island. Local terrain can then decide where water pools, where it accelerates, and where it returns to the sea. This patchiness does not mean the event was random. It means the wave was interacting with a highly detailed world. Every coast has its own fingerprint. During a tsunami, that fingerprint becomes visible through flooding, damage, and survival, revealing how place can shape destiny. Local tsunamis may arrive before any warning message can. When the source is close to shore, time becomes the rarest resource. A nearby undersea earthquake, landslide, or volcanic collapse can send water toward land within minutes. In such cases, official alerts may still be forming while the first surge is already traveling. Phones may be silent, sirens may not activate quickly enough, and emergency managers may still be confirming what happened. This is why people in hazard zones are taught to respond to natural signs without waiting. Strong shaking, unusual sea behavior, or a sudden coastal roar can be enough reason to move. The hardest part is that the decision must be made under stress, often in darkness, rain, or after damage from the triggering event. Yet fast self-evacuation is one of the most effective protections. A local tsunami compresses science, communication, and human reaction into a few urgent minutes. When the source is nearby, the first warning may not come from a device. It may come from the earth itself. Distant tsunamis can give communities hours to evacuate safely. When a wave begins on the far side of an ocean, the danger is still real, but the timeline is different. There may be enough time for scientists to confirm the event, refine forecasts, alert authorities, close beaches, clear harbors, and guide people away from low-lying areas. Those hours are precious. They can turn a potential disaster into a managed evacuation if communication works and the public trusts the instructions. Distant events also reveal the global nature of tsunami safety. A major earthquake near Chile can matter to islands across the Pacific. A rupture near Alaska can matter to distant ports. The people at risk may never feel the ground move, which means warnings must replace instinct. Clear messages become essential because the sky may be calm and the sea may look ordinary for a long time. The wave is traveling invisibly through deep water. The gift of distance is time, and time only helps when people use it. Tsunami evacuation maps are built from worst plausible scenarios. These maps are not drawn only from the most recent event or the most convenient boundary. Planners use geological evidence, fault models, historical records, elevation data, and computer simulations to estimate areas that could flood during severe but credible events. The goal is to avoid underestimating the sea. If a map is too small, people outside the marked zone may think they are safe when they are not. If it is too large, evacuation becomes harder and trust may weaken. Finding the right balance takes science and judgment. The lines on the map represent more than geography. They represent assumptions about earthquake size, wave behavior, tides, coastal shape, and future uncertainty. A person walking past one of these maps may see simple colored zones and arrows. Behind them lies an enormous effort to imagine danger before it arrives. The map is a rehearsal on paper, showing where people should go when there is no time left to debate. Indigenous knowledge can strengthen modern tsunami preparedness. Long before instruments measured seafloor pressure or satellites tracked sea height, coastal peoples learned from lived experience. They noticed where the water had reached, which hills stayed safe, how animals behaved, and which stories children needed to hear. This knowledge can hold details that modern records miss, especially in places where written history is short. When scientists and emergency planners work respectfully with indigenous communities, they may gain a deeper understanding of local hazards. Place names can preserve warnings. Oral histories can point to past flooding. Traditional settlement patterns may reveal safer ground chosen over generations. This is not separate from science. It can guide scientific questions, confirm geological evidence, and improve public trust. Preparedness works best when it belongs to the people who must act on it. A warning system made only of machines may fail if communities do not believe or understand it. Knowledge rooted in culture can make safety feel personal, remembered, and shared. Schools in hazard zones teach children routes to higher ground. Children can become some of the strongest carriers of safety knowledge. In coastal communities, lessons may include recognizing warning signs, following evacuation arrows, practicing routes, and understanding why returning too soon is dangerous. A drill at school can later influence entire families because children bring the information home. In several disasters around the world, education has saved lives when young people remembered what they had been taught and urged others to move. The routes themselves matter. They need to be walked, not just described. A child learns which street climbs fastest, where to turn, and how long the journey feels. Teachers also help reduce fear by making the response familiar. The subject is serious, but the practice can be calm, orderly, and empowering. When a child knows where to go, a frightening event becomes less mysterious. The community gains more than students who can follow instructions. It gains small guides who understand the landscape of survival. Many survivors describe the water retreating with eerie speed. The sight can be mesmerizing. Fish may flap on exposed sand. Rocks, reefs, or harbor floors appear where water stood moments earlier. Boats may settle awkwardly as the sea pulls away. For anyone who does not recognize the warning, curiosity can be deadly. The retreat happens because part of the wave pattern has lowered the water level before the incoming surge. The ocean seems to be leaving, but it is really part of a larger motion that may soon reverse. Survivor accounts often remember the strange silence or confusion of that moment. People walked outward to look. Others shouted for them to run. The scene can feel almost impossible because beaches are familiar places, and familiar places rarely transform so quickly. This is why public education repeats the lesson again and again. If the sea withdraws unusually far, do not investigate. Move away. The exposed seabed is not an invitation. It is one of nature's clearest alarms. Tsunami waves often arrive as surges rather than breaking curls. The familiar image of a wave is a curling wall of water, shaped by wind and breaking near shore. Many tsunami arrivals look different. They may appear as a sudden rising tide, a fast-moving flood, a bore traveling up a river, or a churning surge filled with debris. Sometimes there is no clean crest to point at. The water simply keeps coming, lifting, pushing, and spreading inland. This matters because people who expect a dramatic vertical wall may underestimate a lower but powerful flood. In videos from real events, the first sign may be water spilling over a seawall, reversing a river, or filling streets from unexpected directions. The danger is not cinematic shape. It is volume, speed, duration, and the ability to carry heavy objects. The sea crosses into spaces built for land life, and it does not need to look like a movie to be devastating. A surge can be ordinary in appearance for a few seconds, then unstoppable. Even knee-deep tsunami flow can knock adults down. Moving water is far stronger than it looks. A shallow depth may seem manageable when imagined as still water in a pool, but flow changes everything. Current pushes against legs, shifts footing, and hides uneven ground beneath mud or debris. Once a person falls, it becomes much harder to stand because the body presents more surface area to the current. The water may then carry the person into objects, holes, vehicles, or deeper channels. Tsunami flow can also reverse direction, leaving no stable sense of where safety lies. This is why walking through floodwater is dangerous, even when the depth seems low. The risk grows with speed, debris, and panic. Rescue workers often warn that people underestimate water because it looks familiar. We bathe in it, swim in it, and watch it run down streets in storms. During a tsunami, that familiarity becomes misleading. A few feet, or even less, can hold enough force to take control away from the body. Cars become dangerous, floating debris in moving tsunami water. A vehicle feels solid and protective on dry land, but floodwater can change its role completely. Once water rises around a car, buoyancy begins to reduce the grip of its tires on the road. Current can push it sideways, spin it, or carry it into buildings and people. Inside, doors may become difficult to open because of water pressure or damage. Outside, the car becomes a heavy, moving object that can strike with enormous force. Streets lined with vehicles provide ready-made debris for the surge. In many flood disasters, people have been surprised by how little moving water is needed to move a car. Tsunamis add stronger currents, repeated pulses, and cluttered flow. This is why evacuation by car must happen early, before roads fill, bridges fail, or water arrives. Once flooding begins, a vehicle is no longer a safe shell. It may become part of the moving hazard, carried by the very water people hope to escape. Concrete seawalls can fail when waves overtop and scour them. A wall may block ordinary waves for years and still be vulnerable during an extreme event. If water rises above the top, it can pour over with great force, attacking the landward side that may not be armored as strongly. Flow can dig out soil around the base, a process called scour, undermining the structure until it cracks, tilts, or collapses. Even when the wall remains standing, overtopping can flood the community behind it. The presence of a barrier can also change how water moves, redirecting currents toward gaps, gates, river mouths, or lower neighboring areas. Engineers design seawalls with specific hazards in mind, but every design has limits. The hardest lesson is psychological. A massive concrete structure can make danger feel controlled. It can reduce risk, but it cannot erase it. When warnings are issued, people behind a wall still need to evacuate if they are in the hazard zone. Concrete is a tool, not a guarantee. Some towns build escape hills from engineered earth mounds. In flat coastal areas, high ground may be too far away for people to reach quickly. One solution is to create elevation where nature did not provide it. Engineered mounds, sometimes called tsunami evacuation berms or hills, are built with compacted earth, stable slopes, and enough height to place people above expected flooding. They can be designed as parks, open spaces, or community features during ordinary days. In an emergency, they become refuges. This approach is powerful because it blends safety into daily life. People know the hill because they walk there, play there, or pass it often. When danger comes, the destination is familiar. The design must account for earthquake shaking, erosion, crowd capacity, accessibility, and nighttime use. It is not merely a pile of soil. It is a carefully planned piece of survival landscape. These artificial hills show how communities can reshape the land, not to defeat the ocean, but to give people a reachable place above it. Japan uses coastal forests, walls, gates, and evacuation routes together. No single defense is trusted to do everything. In many Japanese coastal areas, protection is layered. A seawall may reduce ordinary wave impact. Floodgates may close at river mouths or harbor entrances. Pine forests may slow wind, sand movement, and some debris. Marked routes and high platforms give people places to go when the water exceeds defenses. This layered philosophy comes from long experience with earthquakes and the sea. It accepts that structures can fail or be overtopped, and that human movement must remain central. After major disasters, Japan has repeatedly revised its approach, raising some walls, relocating some communities, improving warnings, and preserving memory through museums and education. The result is not perfect safety, because no coast can be made perfectly safe. It is a system of overlapping chances. If one layer is overwhelmed, another may still help. The deeper lesson is humility. Living near a restless ocean requires engineering, memory, practice, and respect working at the same time. Tsunami museums turn painful history into life-saving public memory. Inside these places, visitors may see watermarks, damaged objects, survivor testimony, maps, photographs, and models of past events. The goal is not only to remember loss, it is to teach action. A child looking at a twisted clock or a school wall marked by flood height can understand risk more vividly than from a brochure. Museums make time visible. They show how ordinary mornings became emergencies, how choices mattered, and how communities rebuilt afterward. In Japan, Indonesia, Hawaii, Alaska, and other regions, public memory has become part of hazard reduction. The exhibits can be emotional, but they also give practical lessons. Know the signs. Move quickly. Stay away until the danger is over. Help others when it is safe to do so. Disaster memory fades naturally as generations pass. Museums slow that fading. They hold the evidence in one place and invite people to learn before they need the knowledge. In that sense, remembrance becomes a form of protection. Researchers study survivor stories to improve future warnings. After a tsunami, the numbers matter, but personal accounts reveal things instruments cannot. Survivors describe what they saw first, what confused them, which routes were blocked, what messages they trusted, and why they delayed or moved. These details help scientists and emergency planners understand real human behavior under pressure. A model may show where water went, but testimony shows how people responded as it arrived. Did they hear a siren? Did they understand it? Did traffic slow evacuation? Did someone warn neighbors door to door? Did a memory from school guide them uphill? Such stories can improve science, drills, alerts, maps, and education. They also preserve rare observations of the wave itself, including sound, direction, debris, and timing. Listening is therefore not only compassionate, it is scientific. Each account is a small piece of the next safety system. A survivor's memory, shared carefully, can help protect someone they will never meet on a future shore. Tsunami simulations now include buildings, streets, and moving debris. Early models often focused on wave height and arrival time along broad coastlines. Today, some simulations go much deeper into the built environment. They can estimate how water may travel through neighborhoods, accelerate along roads, wrap around structures, and carry objects. Adding buildings changes the flow, because walls can block, redirect, or channel water. Adding debris makes the problem even more complex. A floating car, shipping container, or timber pile can damage structures and create jams that alter flooding patterns. These detailed models require powerful computers and accurate local data, but they can reveal practical dangers. They may show that one evacuation route is vulnerable to fast flow, while another stays usable longer. They can help design stronger bridges, better refuge sites, and safer land use. The science is becoming more realistic because disasters are not abstract waves moving over empty ground. They happen in towns, with streets, fences, vehicles, homes, and people in motion. Artificial intelligence may help detect tsunami patterns more quickly. Machine learning systems can be trained to recognize complex signals in seismic data, sea level records, pressure sensors, and coastal observations. Their promise lies in speed and pattern recognition. They may help distinguish earthquakes likely to produce dangerous waves, identify unusual sensor readings, or improve forecasts as new data arrives. This does not mean computers replace experts. Tsunami warning is too important for blind automation. Human judgment, physical models, and reliable communication remain essential. But artificial intelligence can assist by scanning enormous streams of information faster than people can. It may notice subtle combinations that suggest a particular type of rupture or help update inundation estimates in real time. The challenge is trust. Systems must be tested against past events, rare scenarios, and noisy data. A false warning has consequences, and a missed warning can be tragic. Used carefully, these tools could become another layer in the warning chain, turning scattered signals into clearer guidance when minutes matter. Offshore earthquakes can lift or sink coastlines in seconds. During a great rupture, the edge of a continent can shift almost instantly. Some areas may rise, leaving docks, reefs, or tidal flats higher than before. Others may drop, allowing seawater to reach farther inland with every tide. This sudden vertical motion can permanently change harbors, wetlands, and beaches. It also affects tsunami flooding, because a coast that sinks during the earthquake becomes lower just as the wave arrives. The change may be visible after the shaking stops. Boats rest strangely. Shorelines move. Marine organisms are stranded or drowned. Scientists measure these shifts to understand the fault's movement and to improve future hazard estimates. For residents, the experience can be deeply unsettling. The place they knew has not merely been flooded. Its elevation has changed. The ground itself has joined the disaster. An offshore earthquake is often imagined as something happening out at sea, but its effects can reach beneath a town and reset the boundary between land and water. Tsunamis can leave ships stranded far inland after flooding retreats. After the water withdraws, some of the strangest evidence can be enormous vessels resting where they do not belong. Fishing boats may sit in streets. Barges may lie across fields. In major events, ships are being carried over seawalls, through harbors, and deep into urban areas. This happens because floating objects move with the surge while water is high enough to lift them. When the flood loses depth or drains away, the vessel settles onto whatever surface lies beneath. The result can look surreal, like a piece of the sea has been misplaced onto land. Removing such vessels can be difficult, requiring cranes, cutting equipment, or careful towing if water can reach them again. They also become symbols of scale. A person standing beside a stranded boat can suddenly understand the depth and strength of the flooding. The ship becomes a marker, showing that the ocean did not merely splash over the shore. It arrived with enough lift to carry machines inland. The word tidal wave is misleading because tides do not cause tsunamis. The older phrase survived because the water can look like a sudden, extreme tide when it floods the coast. But the cause is different. Tides come from the gravitational pull of the moon and sun, following predictable cycles. Tsunamis come from sudden displacement of water by earthquakes, landslides, volcanic activity, or impacts. Calling them tidal waves can create confusion because it suggests a connection to normal sea level rhythms. A person might think the danger can be understood by checking a tide table, or that it will behave like an unusually high tide. It will not. The timing, speed, current, and repeated surges follow a different physics. Language matters in safety. The right word points people toward the right cause and response. Tsunami has become the preferred term because it separates the hazard from everyday tides. It tells us that the event is not part of the ocean's ordinary breathing. It is a sudden disturbance moving through the sea. Rogue waves and tsunamis come from very different ocean physics. A rogue wave is an unusually large, steep wave that appears among wind-driven seas, often in storms or complex wave fields. It can be terrifying for ships because it rises suddenly and breaks with great force. A tsunami is usually much longer, often lower in deep water, and caused by displacement of a large water volume. The two hazards can both be dangerous, but they are not the same kind of event. Rogue waves are surface giants born from interactions between ordinary waves, currents, and wind conditions. Tsunamis involve motion through the whole water column and can travel across basins. One threatens vessels with a sudden wall at sea. The other may pass unnoticed offshore and become deadly near land. Confusing them can blur important safety lessons. A ship captain worries about rogue waves in rough seas. A coastal town worries about tsunami inundation after seafall movement. Both reveal the power of water, but they belong to different chapters of ocean science. Climate change may increase exposure as more people live near coasts. The wave generation itself is usually controlled by geology, not climate. Earthquakes and underwater landslides do not happen simply because the air is warmer. But risk is not only about the trigger. It is also about who and what lies in the path. Around the world, coastal populations have grown, and valuable infrastructure often sits near harbors, beaches, deltas, and low-lying waterfronts. Climate-related pressures can make this exposure more complicated. Erosion may remove natural buffers. Stronger coastal storms can damage dunes and wetlands before a tsunami ever arrives. Development can place more homes, roads, fuel systems, and utilities in hazard zones. In some polar and mountain regions, changing ice and permafrost conditions may affect slope stability, which can matter for local waves. The key idea is vulnerability. A future tsunami of the same physical size may cause greater harm if more people, buildings, and fragile systems occupy the floodplain. Human choices help determine disaster size. Sea level rise lets future tsunamis reach farther inland. When the starting level of the ocean is higher, incoming water begins its journey from a raised baseline. Even a modest increase can matter in low-lying places, especially where the land is flat, and every small rise allows flooding to cross farther. A future tsunami does not need to be larger at its source to cause deeper or more widespread inundation on a coast already affected by rising seas. Higher water can overtop defenses more easily, reach roads sooner, and reduce the margin of safety built into older maps and structures. This is why hazard planning increasingly considers future sea levels rather than relying only on past conditions. The coastline is not fixed. It is shifting through erosion, subsidence, construction, and global ocean rise. A flood boundary drawn decades ago may not remain accurate forever. The physics of the tsunami may begin offshore, but the reach of the water depends on the height of the sea when it arrives. The safest tsunami warning is still the one people remember. In the end, survival often depends on memory becoming action. A sign seen many times, a school drill practiced each year, a story told by grandparents, or a simple rule learned on vacation can return at the exact moment it is needed. Technology can detect, model, and broadcast danger, but people still have to understand and move. The best warning is not only loud or fast. It is familiar. It lives in the mind before the emergency begins. This is why education is repeated across coastal communities. Long shaking means go. Strange sea behavior means go. Do not wait near the shore. Do not return to